Happy Sunday, everyone. Hopefully, everybody had a good week and is having a good weekend. And I hope everyone's feeling rested up and recharged for the week ahead. Welcome to our first tier list that we're going to be doing today. I also want to thank everyone for all the recent support. We have a bunch of brand new people. Some of our videos have been doing really well, especially some of the shorts in that. And I just want to thank you guys for all the very recent support and everything. But don't worry, we're going to keep it poor around here. We're not going to forget our roots. Everything that we currently do and will always do, it's always going to be on a budget. So today, as you can see, we're going to be doing our very first tier list video. We have the categories. I'm going to bounce through them really quick. Up at our what would normally be our S tier or the top tier, we have GOAT, greatest of all time, then followed by nice. These are going to be for ones where I really enjoy them. Mid, they check all the boxes. I generally enjoy them. However, they don't do anything special. It exists. These are ones where I don't hate them, but using them once is more than enough. And our dishonorable category is 343 Industries. These are things that have generally ruined my childhood. But yeah, we're going to get right into it. So this is going to be a tier list kind of going over all of the starter Pokemon throughout the entire Pokemon franchise. I do just want to say that this is my personal opinion. So if I don't like one that you like, or if I love one that you just despise, that's perfectly okay. These are my opinions only, and I'm glad if we disagree. I'm glad if you're able to find something amazing about the ones that I don't like. The criteria for this is really, it's just my personal opinion. I may reference different factors as to why I really like them, but to give, I guess, an example, if a Pokemon's extremely good competitively, like let's say Incineroar, that isn't going to guarantee that it's going to the top of the list. And vice versa. There might be Pokemon that are absolutely terrible competitively or in the game that they were released in, and I just love them anyways. But yeah, we're going to get right into it. We are going to be using just regular cards for this. I just kind of went through, grabbed a card to represent each individual starter. We are going to be focusing more on their final evolutions. That being said, when I was going through my card collection, there were a couple that I actually didn't have any cards for the final evolutions for, or they were either some form of non-holo rarity, which means that they are currently in our basement, which, like I said in our last video, is being worked on. So I did use a card to represent their base form, except for one where didn't even have a holo base form of it. So we're going to be making some magic happen with that one. You might have to take a trip to Imagination Land for it. But that being said, let's get right into it. We're going to start off with what is my personal favorite Pokemon, Charizard. So obviously this one, it's going to go in the goated tier. Let me just kind of explain why I really like Charizard. And it's for a couple reasons. So for starters, I love the design. I don't think it's too over the top. I think it's very, very simple. It looks like a fire-breathing dragon. On top of that, in the games, it was one that I kind of best felt represented the whole idea of Pokemon. So if you started off with red, blue, and yellow like I did, you would know that Charmander was actually kind of like playing it on hard mode. The first two gyms you go up against are both stuff that Charmander would typically struggle with. So it did encourage you to kind of build a team in that to help you through those battles. And I kind of like the idea that you could pick a Pokemon that would have a pretty significant payoff later down the road in that. And it also encouraged team building at a very early level. On top of that, I think the main reason I really love Charizard so much is I actually really appreciate its character arc in the anime. So to kind of keep it short and sweet, Ash adopts this Charmander that was basically abandoned by its trainer. He raises it after the original owner decides he doesn't want Charmander for being too weak. Ash takes care of it. And in a way, Pokemon actually really did a good job at covering how like early childhood trauma can affect people and how they grow up in that. So as you saw Charmander evolve into Charmeleon, and then especially Charizard, you can kind of see it working through some of that trauma. And I just think that the way that Ash had to bond with it, and a lot of the character development that went into it was just phenomenal, especially for a show that was aimed at kids. So yeah, I mean, this will always be my favorite Pokemon. It's going to be our first one up in the GOAT tier. So coming up next then, we have Blastoise. Another original starter. Blastoise, I do appreciate it. It's one of the OGs. You know, it was in the first game. And, you know, for there to be a second, third, fourth, fifth, and so on, your original one has to do good. Or at least it should. I know there are a lot of other franchises out there where they've just kind of been terrible their whole lifetime, but I don't think Pokemon's one of them. And I think a lot of it goes back to that the original Pokemon really knocked it out of the park. That being said, Blastoise, while I do love it, I do think that they have made better water starters throughout the series, which I think is awesome. I always think it's awesome when a series can kind of top some of their initial early designs that really captivates, you know, an audience. So Blastoise, I love it. I just feel that there are better water Pokemon out there. It's even in Gen 1, I'll be honest, I was always a big Lapras fan, Starmie. That being said, you know, I was never opposed to starting off with Squirtle, and Blastoise I thought was well worth the payoff. So I am going to put Blastoise in our nice tier. Like I said, you know, I do think that there are better ones out there. But overall, though, I still really, really enjoy it. Coming up next, so this card actually features two of them, but we're going to be talking about Venusaur. And Venusaur, I'll be honest with you, this was a Pokemon that I have really changed my tune about. Initially, I hated Venusaur, and I don't think it was really anything that Venusaur did. I just really don't care for the grass type. I know as like supports in that, it can be fairly good. But Venusaur just didn't do anything for me. Until I got back into Pokemon, which for those of you that don't know, I stopped playing right around the release of Diamond and Pearl, and then Diamond and Pearl, and then I came back during Sword and Shield. And by this point, a lot of things had changed. I had changed as a person as well, and I was actually able to better appreciate Venusaur. With Charizard being my favorite starter, a lot of times I do like to kind of build Sun teams. And with Venusaur having the hidden ability Chlorophyll, it's also something that thrives on a Sun team. The other nice thing about Venusaur is it actually covers pretty much all the weaknesses that Charizard has. So just from using this in a lot of double battles with my favorite Pokemon, I've really grown to respect it and for what it can do. I also love the design. I think it was a phenomenal starter Pokemon. And it also did extremely well in Kanto. It was probably the best pick in the game. So if you would have asked maybe 10-year-old me, this would have been in the 343 Industries category. However, I've actually completely changed my opinion. Venusaur, it's good. So moving on then into Gen 2, we're going to start off with Typhlosion. So Typhlosion is an interesting one. This is also one that I've kind of changed my opinion on. It was Cyndaquil was my original starter in Silver and Gold, and I loved it. I loved it up until the point it got a regional form. Once Hisuian Typhlosion was introduced, I kind of fell a little bit out of love with regular Typhlosion. I do love its design. I think its design is classic. I also feel bad because I do kind of feel like it's gotten screwed over ever since the games went to 3D, and it's lost the fire effect kind of coming out of its neck unless it's attacking, or really unless it's just attacking. But that being said, my other kind of reason for falling a little bit out of love with this is whenever I came back to the games, I did notice that Typhlosion actually has the exact same stats as Charizard. So it's essentially kind of like a Charizard clone in some senses. Granted, it doesn't have the secondary flying typing, which means it does play a little bit different. However, I just never felt like it really did enough to really separate itself from being compared to Charizard. Thankfully, though, like I said, we are going to be talking about it later. It did get a regional form, which I do kind of felt brought Typhlosion back and really improved on some of the gripes that I later developed for it. So originally, I probably would have put this in the nice tier, but I think mid is where I'm going to place it. You know, it is a good Pokemon. I do like it, but for me right now, it's just kind of checking off the boxes of what I expect for a starter and not really going above that anymore. Next, we have Feraligatr. And Feraligatr, actually, quick little fun fact about it. The reason its name is spelled the way it is, where it ends on two consonants instead of like an ER or, you know, an AR, you know, or some sort of vowel and then a consonant to spell the gator portion of it, is actually because they ran out of space in that to put that letter in, so they just dropped it and threw the R on. That was just due to the cap of letters that you could use to name a Pokemon. That being said, though, Feraligatr, I do believe it was an improvement on Blastoise. My biggest issue with it is it didn't get the introduction that it really deserved. So up until Gen 4, moves were either all special or they were all physical. So if you were a water type and you were a physical attacker, you were going to have a rough time because all water type attacks were actually special attacks. And this is what kind of screwed over Feraligatr. Feraligatr is a physical water attacker, and up until Gen 4, it really wasn't able to really thrive the way that it was meant to. However, since it's been released in Scarlet and Violet, and I've got to spend some time messing around with it, and that I've really enjoyed being able to use Feraligatr the way that it was meant to be used. On top of that, its hidden ability Sheer Force plus using a Life Orb, I think that's just a stupid awesome setup for it. So I've been having a lot of fun with this. Feraligatr, it's going to go up into the nice tier. And I do know the camera's lost focus of everything back there. We will refocus it once we get through the video. Just kind of want to highlight the card artwork for now. Next, we have Meganium, and I'm gonna keep it short. I really don't have anything too great to say about Meganium. I think I've legitimately used it in one playthrough of Gold and Silver, and that was it. It didn't do anything for me. And even coming back and trying it out again in Scarlet and Violet, my opinion has not changed. I think this is probably the absolute worst grass type starter that has been released. That being said, I don't completely hate the design of it. I just wish that there was something that made Meganium kind of stand out a little bit. Unfortunately, though, until that happens, this is going to be our first stinker. This one's going right in the 343 category. Sorry, Meganium fans. If you guys love it, please let me know in the comments what about it captures your attention and what makes you love it. For me, I've genuinely tried to like this Pokemon, but I just can't. Again, I do want to express, though, I do think there are a lot worse Pokemon out there than Meganium, but when we're looking at the starters, and so many of them have just been phenomenal, it just drops instantly right to the bottom. Coming up next, though, and leading us into Generation 3, we have Blaziken. So Blaziken was the first in what would be a trio of fire and fighting starters. And I will say, I thought it did that phenomenally. Blaziken, I love it. I love its design. I love the firefighting typing. I am perfectly okay, though, if we continue to take a break from it. But it started off a trend, and it started it off with a bang. Blaziken was actually the first Pokemon I ever got to level 100 legitimately. For those of you that were around for the Game Boy Color days, you may remember that phenomenal thing called a Game Shark. So rare candies were pretty easy to get, and you could boost everything to 100 as long as your parents had the money and were willing to buy you a Game Shark. Or if you were old enough and you had your own money, you just went out and did that yourself. But Blaziken was the first I ever got to 100 legitimately. So I do hold a very soft spot for it. And also I think it started off a very successful typing trio that we saw within the next 2 games. That being said, though, I do not believe that it is the best of that firefighting trio. And for that reason, I'm actually going to put it at nice. Just because, again, I am happy to see that they were able to improve upon it. Not just with how it handled in the game, but also design-wise. So next up, this is actually the Pokemon that we're going to have to throw on our imagination cap for, because the only card I could find for any of its evolutions was this giant jumbo card. So we're not going to be putting this on the mat to rank Swampert, or as you can see here, it's pre-evolution Mudkip. We're actually going to be using a Ditto card for that, so just put on your imagination lenses and everything will be okay. That being said, though, Mudkip, or Swampert, I'm sorry, phenomenal Pokemon. I actually really appreciated just how powerful of a Pokemon that was. You know, a lot of times for water types, electric is going to be your biggest weakness. And when Swampert came out and had the ground type, that made that thing just a tank originally. Because, I mean, I know playing with some of my friends doing link battles at that time, you know, whenever they saw Swampert, everybody knew it was, you know, the water starter's final evolution. But a lot of them weren't at the point where they realized that it had the secondary ground typing. It did mean that it was 4 times weak to grass. However, grass, I don't feel like it was in a good place at those times. There were some viable grass-type Pokemon, but I do think that there wasn't enough in that to really kind of screw over Swampert. That being said, though, I really love Swampert's design. I love axolotls. I think they're really cool animals. And again, though, I am only going to put Swampert again, into the nice tier, just because I do feel that there were some better starters in the water category to come out. There's our little Ditto card in that. It's nothing special, it's just acting as a placeholder. But moving right along then into our final Pokemon from the trio, we have Sceptile. And Sceptile, for me, was really the first grass type that truly captured my attention. It's got an amazing design. I loved a lot of the different move sets that it had. The only thing that ever really bummed me out with it was the fact that it didn't have a secondary typing like Blaziken and Swampert. Now, granted, in, I want to say, Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, it did get a Mega Evolution, which actually gave it the Dragon typing as a secondary typing, and I thought that was really cool. Overall, though, I love its design. I love its playability. And so for me, Sceptile, it's going to go right into the goated tier. You know, somebody who didn't like grass-type Pokemon, they sure knocked it out of the park with this one. So now moving on into Gen 4, we're going to start off with Infernape. So like I said with Blaziken, I do feel that there was a better firefighting starter, and for me, that was Infernape. I think Infernape did exactly what I wanted Blaziken to do, and it just did it a little bit better. Plus, I love the fact that it was like an angry fire monkey. So having gone back and played through Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl, I know not the greatest of games, but I genuinely enjoyed running Infernape into that. And I've enjoyed it ever since. So phenomenal design, great typing, and I just love the fact that it was, you know, a Pokemon that you could really get out there, do a lot of damage with, not just on the physical side like you would expect, but also on the special side. So Infernape, for me, easy S tier. Then we come to Empoleon. Empoleon is a Pokemon that I really wanted to love. I thought the water steel typing, I believe it is still only Empoleon that has that typing. However, I just haven't been able to fall in love with it like I wanted to. I appreciate its design. I like the fact that it's a penguin and it kind of has the, well, doesn't kind of, it does have like Neptune's trident on its head. I think its design's really cool. However, just in terms of gameplay wise, for me personally, I just haven't found a build for it that I really, really like yet. It is something that I'm still experimenting with, kind of looking up different competitive builds or just more fun builds to try and really learn how to play with Empoleon to see if my mind will change on it. As of right now, it's going to go in the mid tier. It is one that I'm hoping that maybe at a later date we can bump it up a little bit. Like I said, I like its design. I like its typing. It's just how it plays I haven't been super huge on. And to round out Gen 4 with our Sinnoh starters, we have Torterra. Torterra, for me, it was another one that whenever I saw it, I'm not going to lie, I wasn't blown away with its design. I didn't think it was horrible. I thought it was a very interesting design. However, it just really didn't do anything personally for me. I did, however, though, like that it had the secondary typing of ground because it introduced a way that all the starters could not only hit their usual counterpart super effective for, but also the ones that they would be typically weak to. So for Infernape, fighting can hit steel, and for Torterra, with Empoleon gaining the steel typing, it does lose its weakness to grass. However, ground can hit both fire and steel for super effective. So I did like how they did this trio. That being said there, I still couldn't get behind Torterra. I did run it in a playthrough of, I want to say, Brilliant Diamond. It just didn't really do a whole lot for me in that game. Like I said, I'm just not super huge on its design. I appreciate the typing. But outside of that, I really don't have anything that's terrible to say about it. I know Torterra can be a threat. However, it's not one that I'm drawn to use. It's, I've gotten it shiny. Well, I've gotten pretty much all of these shiny. However, whenever I was playing through Legends Arceus with it and I first got it as a shiny, I was thinking, okay, I'm going to add this to my team. And very quickly, I was just like, I think we're going to stick it back in the box. But to me, it's still better than Meganium, so it's not going to go in the 3-4-3 tier. It exists. Hopefully, like Empoleon, I'll be able to mess around with it a little bit more and find a way to love it. Coming up next and leading us into Generation 5, we have Emboar. Here we have Tepig with also its evolution in the background as well. That being said, though, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this one. This entire line, I don't care for. So I will give Emboar some credit in the fact that it wasn't another fast, mixed firefighting type attacker. That being said, though, I just think that Blaziken and Infernape did exactly what Emboar did, but just better. I know that Emboar was meant to be more of a bulky firefighting type, but it didn't live up to the other two for me. Also, I don't think its design is really all that great. For me, this is the worst fire type Pokemon, or not the worst fire type Pokemon, but the worst fire type starter Pokemon in the series for me. So because of that, this one, unfortunately, it is going to have to go in the 3-4-3 tier with Meganium. I don't want Meganium to not have some company in that, but unfortunately, Emboar is just one that I'm good with it just sitting in the box forever. But to kind of pick our spirits back up, we'll go into Oshawott here. So Oshawott, and then of course its final evolved form, Samurott. I actually really, really do love them. However, like Typhlosion, I much prefer its Hisuian form. Nothing against regular Samurott, however, just when I compare the two, Hisuian Samurott has so much more going for it. And regular Samurott, to me, it was just kind of one of those Pokemon where I loved its design, but it just didn't kind of do some of the things gameplay-wise that I was hoping it would really be able to do. So Samurott, it is going to go in the mid-tier. Again, I don't have anything really positive to say about it other than its design. I do love its design. But other than that, it just does feel like a starter that it's checking off all the boxes for me. So moving right along then, we have Superior. And Superior was one that I didn't get to play with. Well, I also didn't get to play with Emboar until Scarlet and Violet. That being said, I kind of dig it. Its design isn't amazing. I do like the fact that it's kind of like a snake and it looks like it's got a little bit of royalty kind of going to it. But its design really isn't special. However, what I do like is it's another grass type that gets the hidden ability Contrary, which for those of you that don't know, it reverses the effects of status moves. So like whenever you use Leaf Storm with most grass types, they lose 2 stages to their special attack. However, with Superior and other Pokemon that have Contrary, they actually increase their special attack by 2 stages, which means that you can run a very powerful move that normally has a drawback to it, and instead of lose viability, you actually can become a very serious threat. The other thing that's also pretty cool about Superior is it's one of the few Pokemon that I feel that the new Stellar Terra type actually works really well with. For those of you that don't know, Scarlet and Violet, they did just add in a new Terra type called the Stellar type. Essentially, it changes the Terra Blast move into, I believe it's Terra Starfall, which hits everything for neutral damage and then hits all terrestrialized Pokemon for super effective damage. The drawback is whenever you use that particular move, your attack and special attack loses 1 stage. However, with this being a Contrary user, it goes up a stage. And so because of that, Superior, I do enjoy using it. It does feel very much like it's a gimmick Pokemon, and I think if it didn't have that, or if it didn't have that ability, I'd probably rank it a little bit lower. However, it does. We don't live in that world where it doesn't have it. Superior has Contrary and is niche of a gimmick as it is. I think it's pretty fun. Superior, we are going to be putting it in the mid tier, which I know I just talked a whole lot of good stuff about it. However, like I said, its design, not the greatest. It definitely could be worse. I really do enjoy using it gameplay wise. I just wish the design was a little bit better. So we are going to be breaking this video up into 2 parts just so it's not anything crazy long, and that way you can kind of watch it a little bit more leisurely. This first half, it's going to be out Sunday. I am going to be recording the second half alongside of it, and we'll probably upload that one during the middle of the week. And then we'll have another video come out on the following Saturday as what I'm trying to make as per usual on that. But just to go ahead and recap here real quick, we're going to take the old camera off the stand here, just so we can get a better look at everything that's going on. So at our bottom tier, things that have kind of ruined my childhood, we have Meganium and Emboar all by its lonesome. In the It Exists tier, we have Torterra. In our mid tier, we have Typhlosion, its Johto form, Empoleon, Samurott, and Superior. In our nice tier, Pokemon that I really, really like, but I do think that there are some that are better, we have Blastoise, Feraligatr, Blaziken, and a Ditto standing in for Swampert. And then in our GOAT tier, Pokemon that I just always enjoy using, we have Charizard, Venusaur, Sceptile, and of course, Infernape. So, I know right now we're only through Gen 5, but feel free to let me know down in the comments how your guys' personal rankings compare to mine. You know, let me know what your favorites are, what your least favorites are. And as always, if you could do that dirty trifecta of like, commenting, and subscribing, it does help the channel out immensely. And as always, I appreciate everyone for watching, and we'll catch you next time.